This is John Felt, and this is the Merschman Seeds Ag Weather Briefing, March 16th, 2019. Well, it's definitely a very busy week over a large part of the Corn Belt, depending where you're at. If you're in the northwest Corn Belt, especially Nebraska, parts of South Dakota, northwest Iowa, very heavy snow, blizzard conditions. Over the eastern Corn Belt, severe storms, including tornadoes, some moderate rain elsewhere, and just about everywhere, very high winds. So it's very active. This was the precipitation over the last week. This came in the form of rain and thunderstorms. You can see these streaks here. These are thunderstorm streaks that produce tornadoes. And this came in the form of snow. Like I said, just about everywhere had very high winds. This site in Oklahoma, you can see the pressure went down very quickly, and with that we had high winds. In this case, winds gusted for 60 miles an hour for an hour and a half. So there's the system. It was a historic system, produced record amounts of snowfall. You can see here the snow up in this region right here. The red is over 18 inches of snow. Parts of South Dakota, Nebraska, surrounding states, Wyoming, and you can see how strong this system was. There's the center right there. It almost like an inland hurricane. What was also quite interesting last week is look at the yellow here in Wisconsin, above normal temperatures. Minnesota, close to normal temperatures. And I put out a lot of content of that ahead of this, but I did mention that this was going to melt a lot of snow in this area, Iowa as well. And that is what it did. And since rivers in many cases were frozen, we had a lot of ice jam action and flooding from both rain on snow, from snow melt, and for ice jams as well. So what we've ended up with is very serious flooding on the Missouri. This gives you some idea of where the most significant flooding is. And matter of fact, these are spots where we have the potential to get record-breaking flood. So that is a historic flood on the Missouri River and tributaries due to, like I said, the rain, snow, and in this case, the Missouri, it's more snow melt, and over the southern Wisconsin area, it's rain, snow, and ice melt. And then we even have the lower Mississippi. This has crested, it is falling, but even in that area. So like I said, Wisconsin as well, southern Wisconsin is also going for record flooding due to the snow melt and the ice. So a lot going on. And it's not over yet. So what we have now is, here's the current jet stream, and we have this dip in the jet stream now. And as you know, when we have a dip in the jet stream, that results in colder air that has moved in here over a large part of the nation, and it's fairly quiet. Cold air usually is stable air and drier air. But we still have, despite all the melting, we still have a very extensive snow pack over northern Wisconsin, just about all of Minnesota. Now, a lot of it in the southeast was melted, and parts of the Dakotas. And with the colder air moving in, that's going to sort of slow that melting down. So I think we've had round one, but we still have a round two coming, and that's going to occur pretty much over the next week to 10 days. It's not going to be way out there. I'll be telling you why in just a moment here. So what you can see here is the areas in red have been snow melt, and this was on Thursday, showing how we're eroding that snowpack so quick over southern Wisconsin, parts of Minnesota and Iowa. And this was yesterday, the last 24 hours, and look how much less. Now, some of this is just we don't have as much snow, but I think for the most part this was because the colder air has moved in and it's slowing it down. So the good news is that's that managed melt. Some melting during the day, refreezing at night, and that'll slow the runoff down a bit compared to what we had. But the fact remains we have an awful lot of major flooding going on here. Purple is major, red is moderate, and you can see we're looking at tributaries and the main stem Missouri, lower part of the Missouri down to about Kansas City, and even moderate flooding down through Missouri. And then the upper Mississippi down to about St. Louis, and then this is from past flooding, even the lower Mississippi, but that, like I said, has crested. Okay, so let's get into the forecast here. And what I want to point out here is we start out right here in blue, and that's that dip in the jet stream. But as we go through time, you can see it's replaced here with brown, and that's saying the jet stream is further north than normal. I also want to point out that as we get into, goes out through 14 days, as we get into week 2, we also shift around to somewhat of a southwest flow. And that's going to be changing our weather too. But that's out towards the end of week 2. So what does that do to temperature? Well, look at this. We start out with that blue, with a dip in the jet stream. We end up in the brown. So we're going to go through definitely a spring thaw here. We're going to go from below normal temperatures out into this week. But as we get into the latter part of this week and into next week, it's going to be much warmer temperatures over the entire region. It looks like it's going to be very quiet. I don't see much rain or snow with this. Maybe some light amounts here and there, but at least the good news is we're not going to get real heavy rain this week as these rivers are cresting. However, I need to point out that this is for Minneapolis. You can see this is the average temperature. We're getting into the part. The average temperature is almost close to 32 degrees, and the average daytime temperature is in the 40s. We run above that, we're in the 50s, if not even close to 60. So even with normal weather this time of year, we're going to be melting that snow, and models show it almost all gone over the next 10 days. So round 2, that second push of runoff is not too far down the road. And you can see it when we look at the 6 to 10 day. Look at this, right over some areas that have had that real extensive snow cover above normal, and that continues into 14 day. Dry this week, but next week with that southwest flow I mentioned, could be a little bit wetter next week, so we'll have to watch that because we are going to have another wave coming down. So I think the big story this week is round 1 of snow melt and ice jam flooding, but colder and quiet into this week. But then as we get into the latter part of the week, we're going to warm up. We're going to melt the rest of that snow, and there'll be another pulse coming down the Missouri and especially the upper Mississippi with this second pulse. That's this week's forecast. We will be talking with you again next weekend. Take care.